Today, I'm glad to be joined by a Miami native, environmentalist, and award-winning author of the Miami Creation Myth. He is the CEO of ARO Communications, an environmental communications firm that helps organizations tell their stories with a purpose. Our guest's career has spanned in the international public relations sector, the U.S. Department of State, also Harvard Business School, and even time as Mexican President Felipe Calderón's personal assistant. On the outside of boardrooms and institutions, he has personally removed more than 40,000 pounds of trash from Miami Mangrove's forest. His work sits at the intersection of identity, responsibility, and place. In Coming Out, we're talking about what it means to show up fully in who you are and what you care for and in the city you call home. I am joined today by Andrew Otazo. Andrew, welcome. Once again, welcome, Andrew. Welcome to the show, Coming Out. I'm your host, Gabriel Paez. It's an honor, really, to have you here. I would like to know a little bit about you for our audience's sake. Just tell us your background and where you just a brief synopsis on yourself.
Sure. I mean, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Great.
I'm a Miami boy through and through. I was born and raised here. I lived here, from born in Jackson to I was 18. Graduated from high school. Then I went off to West Point, U.S. Military Academy. Spent 2 years there. We talked briefly about this, but I broke a shin and I lost a bunch of hearing. So after 2 years, I came back to Miami, graduated from the University of Miami, started my master's degree, went down to studied in Argentina, studied in Sao Paulo, Brazil, then went up to D.C. for the first time, worked at the U.S. State Department, out of all things in the Venezuela desk. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's quite the time. Then came back to Miami, graduated with my graduate degree, then went up to Boston, where I was hired as the assistant to former Mexican President Felipe Calderón at the Harvard Kennedy School. Then I went over to the Harvard Business School. I worked as a research associate for 2 years. I have 17 academic publications. Then I went to D.C. I was the executive director of the Cuba Study Group, which works on Cuba policy. I did that for 3 years. Then I came back to Miami. I worked at several different national and international public relations agencies, and now I have my own communications agency called ARO Communications. I work mostly with environmental organizations, but I'm sector agnostic. I work with basically anybody. And beyond that, I'm a published author. I have a book called The Miami Creation Myth, which won the International Latino Book Award. And it turns out I'm an international Latino, so they gave me a medal. That's
okay.
Great. And more to the point, I think this is why I'm on the show. On my free time, I picked up 40,000 pounds of trash from South Florida's coastal ecosystems over the last 8 years, mostly from our mangrove forests.
Okay, number one, I want to highlight that you are also high school. You went.
Oh, yeah.
Is Belen Jesuit?
Yeah, and you went to Columbus?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So that was a kind of like something that called my attention as well. I think that we need to merge that brotherhood and not be so much
Los
rivals.
Maristas.
Yes, the Maristas.
My dad was a Marista in Cuba.
There you go. Always adelante. But really, you're on the show for multiple reasons, but mainly because of our because you're an environmentalist. Talk to us about what it is that drove you to mangroves and start cleaning it. Did you just wake up one day, or did it start rattling on you? Or
yeah, so I fell in love with the mangroves as a kid. So I am a recklessly curious person. I just need to know. I need to fill all the blank spaces in the map. I need to understand what's there. And when I was a teenager, essentially, I would go to Bearcut Preserve in Crandon Park in Key Biscayne. And I would bike around and explore, and then I'd come up against the edge of civilization, basically, which is where these mangrove forests began. I got really curious, and I would go in there in shorts in the middle of the summer, and I'd get destroyed by mosquitoes. But I learned after a while, and I would go in there with a more applicable gear, and I fell in love with this habitat. It's so unique. It's so incredible. It's an environment that's constantly in transition. It's a tidal ecosystem. So literally, it's constantly changing from minute to minute. And I really, really loved it. And I would go in there for basically like a sense of peace and solitude. And then I left for West Point and I came back and I'd go back into this environment, but like rather than finding that sense of peace, I would get really upset. I would leave angrier than when I went in, and more frustrated because it looked like a landfill. So it's not in any way an exaggeration to say that I couldn't take a single step in the mangroves without stepping on a piece of plastic. So this infuriated me.
And that's they're so important to our ecosystem.
Yeah,
here.
we can get into that. But
For sure.
it's a keystone habitat in South Florida. So just from the bare bones, they protect all of our infrastructure. So the mangroves act as like a giant sponge, essentially. Whenever there's a hurricane or a storm surge that comes in, they absorb all this water and all this energy that doesn't flood our neighborhoods, that doesn't destroy our streets or our houses or whatever. And also, the vast majority of the reef fish offshore spend their juvenile stages protected in the roots of the mangroves, not to mention all the shore birds, whether it's the ibis or the pelicans or the egrets or herons or whatever, they nest in the canopy of the mangroves, so it acts as a rookery. So basically, all of South Florida's coastal animals depend on the mangroves to survive. And I learned about this as I got older. And that's why it was so infuriating that I would go in there and I would see all this trash, and I knew that it was basically poisoning all these animals. It was destroying this environment, and I reached out to a bunch of different politicians, and and this was back in the 20-teens, and there hadn't been a real movement yet established to take care of coastal trash. That's since changed, but I didn't get any responses. So like one day I was like, well, okay, no one's gonna do anything about it, so let me just start picking up trash.
So you took it upon yourself to come and do what others or electeds weren't doing.
Yeah, the thing is, the mangroves are kind of out of sight, out of mind. Nobody goes in there unless you're like a weirdo, present company included. So yeah, like it's not a priority. Like if you take people in there and they see the magnitude of the amount of trash in there, they get it immediately, and it's not political, which is wonderful in Miami. It's like one of the very few things that like it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat or whatever. You go in there and you're like, oh, I get it. Nobody wants more trash in the mangroves. But the thing is, because nobody goes into the mangroves, they don't see it.
Right.
So it's a problem that's like completely, it's not even within the frame of reference for most people.
When you say it's full of trash, what is the most common trash that you find? They say that it's tires. Is it tires?
I find entirely too many tires.
Okay.
But the most common piece of trash is probably water bottles and plastic bags. So there's a misconception that people are going out into the mangroves and dumping trash there. There's some of that, specifically wherever there's an intersection between, a road, any location where humans can
easy accessible.
Exactly. The boundary between nature and human infrastructure, that's where you'll find dumping. That's where you'll find trash. But like people aren't going half a mile into the mangroves to drop a water bottle and walk away. The vast majority of that trash comes from the city, from urban settings. And what happens is that, wherever, you can be in Kendall, you can be in Hialeah or Doral, and drop a wrapper, a candy wrapper, or a plastic bottle on the sidewalk. And it rains here. We're in a subtropical environment. When it rains, all that trash goes right into the gutter. There's no filtration system, and it goes right out of an outflow directly into the bay. And then that winds up in the mangroves, because the mangroves are like essentially a giant comb, and they're really, really good at holding on to trash. So that's where the vast majority of that trash comes from. And styrofoam as well, like so much styrofoam.
So when you pick up this trash, what do you do with it after you're... Do you leave it for somebody to pick it up, or do you use it for art, or
no? I don't.
Or do you sell it?
I don't have 40,000 pounds of art, unfortunately. No, what I do is I will coordinate with whatever like local government is responsible for the area I'm cleaning up. So in Bear Cub Preserve, that's county land, so I'll coordinate with the county. I have a cleanup coming up on Sunday. And they're completely aware of what we're doing. We have a drop-off location for all the trash. They'll come and pick it up later. I picked up a 1,000-pound tire. It was literally taller than me this Saturday from Virginia Keys Historic Beach Park, and that's City of Miami property. So, I contacted the relevant authorities, and they went by, a day later, and they grabbed it with a forklift. Or like I spent the last year picking up 11,300 pounds from North Point Park, also in Virginia Key, and that's City of Miami. So again, coordinate with them. So it just depends. Or
are some areas more prone to getting the trash because of the currents,
right,
and their location, geographically location? Is
yes.
that what it is?
Yeah. So basically, wherever you have a rip current going through. So
Okay.
Bear Cut Preserve Bear Cut is the channel between Key Biscayne and Virginia Key. And you have this giant volume of water coming in and out twice a day. So that's again, wherever there's water, there's trash. And that's driving all this trash into that area. Virginia Key, you have Norris Cut, which separates it from Fisher Island. Again, you have a ton, literal tons of trash coming through. And so the thing is, there's kind of like a deposit of trash on the ocean floor. And whenever there's a big hurricane or storm, what it does is it lifts all that trash up, and because the water level might rise 10, 15 feet through the storm surge, it'll bring it deep into the mangroves and deposit it there, and then the water will recede and the trash will stay. So that's usually what happens.
And are we seeing the effects of that trash already? Or
Yeah.
talk to us about that.
So at the most basic level, if you throw a water bottle into the ocean, it doesn't stay one solid piece of trash. People say plastic lasts forever. It does not. The UV rays from the sun and the wave action, it breaks it down into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic called microplastics. And then you have the animals at the bottom of the food chain, which could be, crabs, it could be arthropods, it could be bait fish. They mistake that for food, and they'll eat it. And then you remember the rest from science class, the food web or the food chain. And you'll have the larger predators eat the smaller prey until, you get the largest oceanic predators, which is tuna, marlin, etc. They have the largest concentrations of these toxins in their bodies, and they're also the fish that we like to eat.
The most.
So like we'll eat them. We'll essentially ingest all those toxins as well.
So by eating crabs, we're in.
We could absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just like the
bottom feeders.
Yeah, it's not just them. So like for example, manatees. They eat seagrass. They eat manatee grass, turtle grass, and they'll just kind of stick their snouts in the seagrass beds and just eat them up. So all these microplastics filter into the sand in the seagrass beds, and they'll ingest this tremendous amount of plastics. And a couple of years ago, we had a huge manatee die-off in the state of Florida, 1,000 manatees across the state. And they opened up their stomachs, and more than half of them had an enormous concentration of plastics in their stomachs. And you see like this phenomenon of whale beaching. Essentially, you have carcasses of whales that wind up on shore. And what happens there is that you have these filter feeders, essentially. So baleen whales, they'll ingest like huge amounts of water and then filter out the water and keep the food. They'll also ingest plastic bags and other plastic items, for example, and they can't digest that. So it'll remain in their stomach, and it'll it can't pass through the rest of their digestive tract. So it'll make them feel full, so they'll stop eating, and then they starve to death, and then they wash ashore. Or like sea turtles, they often mistake plastic bags for jellyfish, which they love to eat. So they'll eat that and they'll die. Or another terrible killer is it's fishing line, essentially. So somebody will cast a line, it gets caught up in something, they cut it, and they just let it go, and they put in a new line. But that line will get caught up between the trees, right, between mangrove prop roots or in the actual branches, and birds can't see that, and they'll fly through, and it'll decapitate them. Or final example. I can keep going, but this is the final example.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm not really, familiar with all these things and intricacies of what you are. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting to hear him. So go ahead.
Yeah. So finally, you have wading birds. So you have, you'll see. I'm sure you've seen ibis or herons. They have long, skinny legs and they have these long beaks, and they use those beaks basically to just kind of move through the water at low tide and pick arthropods or worms or whatever they can get. But they're also ingesting all this microplastic that is accumulating on the sand. And like I've seen it myself. I've seen birds with like their stomachs just full of trash and that they die and then it literally explodes. So yeah, it has a detrimental effect on every single possible coastal animal you can think of.
In researching you, I find that you've also picked up drugs. You found a lot of drugs.
Not a lot.
Okay.
I found one square grouper.
Okay.
Which was actually spherical. It was about this big.
Okay.
But yes, I have found a square grouper.
And like, is it easy to spot? Is it
Oh, yeah.
stuck in the middle of the trees, like
like
just
any-
floating around?
It's like any other piece of trash.
Okay.
But like when it's like wrapped in all this duct tape, like you can tell. Like I know what normal trash looks like. I
Okay.
am a bit of a trash expert at this point.
At this point,
And like I'll look. Also, I grew up in Miami. Like I know what a square grouper
right,
looks like.
of course.
So I'll look at it and be like, I know what that is. Okay, it's cocaine.
And what is you've had like some individual that you found in
Oh, a bank robber.
a bank robber? Tell us about
Yeah.
that. How was that about? I mean, that's probably your biggest story there, or a biggest find maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely my weirdest find.
Weirdest find. Okay,
Yeah.
talk to us about your weirdest find.
Yeah, so I was leading a pair of high school students through the mangroves, and I was just explaining how, how this environment works, and why it's so special and why it's so cool. And I, in the middle of the mangroves, middle of nowhere, I hear electronic dance music blasting into the swamp, and I was like, that's a bit weird. So I, tell the kids to like stay somewhere safe, and I go and approach this music, and lo and behold, there's this guy who had built a platform in the middle of the mangroves. He had chopped down a bunch of mangroves. I was actually just there at that site last weekend, and it's still bare. So like he'd cut down all these mangroves, illegal in the state of Florida, built a platform, had a tent on the platform, and had these two big speakers, and was blasting EDM. And I was like, all right, well that's a problem. Also, he was in a preserve, an environmental preserve, so no one was allowed to be in there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm allowed to go in there. The county knows what I'm doing, but like literally nobody else is supposed to be there. So, I went and got the kids, took them back to the parking lot, went around the guy, he didn't see us. Then I went to the county, I was like, there's a guy out there, please go get him, this isn't good. And, I sent them his location, like an actual Google pin. And they're like, okay. And then I followed up about a month later and I was like, did you get the guy? And they're like, we sent a pair of cops, they couldn't find him. I don't know about that. But like, I was like, okay, well, let me
But
take.
you did find him.
Yes, and then I took a county employee, and I walked him to the exact location where he was. We were 20 feet from him, and there he was, shirtless, putting on deodorant. It's like, there he is. Please go get him. And we went back, and then I followed up again. They're like, they still hadn't got him. And turns out, dude had a canoe, and he got on his little canoe. And he canoed from Bearcat Preserve all the way to Miami Beach, which is impressive in and of itself because that is about a 7-mile. I've done it in a kayak. It's about a 7-mile paddle, and it's across the port of Miami, which is one of the busiest ports in the United States. There's giant cruise ships and container ships going through there. But he crossed the port of Miami. And he
Just
went,
yesterday, there were like 9 ships on port.
oh, yeah.
So it's winter.
Super dangerous.
Yeah.
And so he beaches his canoe on the sand, walks into a bank with no mask and no gun, demands money from the cashier. The cashier's like, all right, here's whatever I have, takes the money, walks back to his canoe, paddles his happy self, again, across the port of Miami, all the way back to Key Biscayne. And then the county was like, well, this is a problem. And they sent in a SWAT team, and they went and got him.
Okay. So finally,
Yeah, they finally got him.
after multiple robberies,
Yeah.
what's your next goal? What do you bringing about, that you want to see?
Yeah.
Are you promoting any legislation,
Yeah, so I work in public relations.
Okay.
That's my, that's how I pay the bills. There's no
Bread and
money in
butter.
trash.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. After all I've accumulated. So what I've been doing, so this is not an end to itself. So it's, yes, I make a local difference. I get to improve environments I care about, locations I care about, but that, again, is only a localized difference. That has not been my goal from the beginning. The reason that I'm here is because you've seen my content on social media, or you saw, some outlet pick it up for some reason, which is, again, derived from that content. Basically, if I hadn't brought a GoPro to the mangroves and videoed myself doing this work, then I wouldn't have the opportunity to educate other people about it, about the magnitude of the problem and what they can do about it. So beyond just making that local difference, I want to specifically educate people in South Florida about this issue. And that's something I've been working on for the last 8 years, and that's something that I'll continue to do. I talk to middle, high schools, college, graduate level courses. I'll literally talk to anybody. I talked to a conference at Zoo Miami. I've talked to private companies. I'll literally talk to anybody. So that's...
Well, you're getting the message across.
Exactly.
And that's why I wanted to bring you over here,
Exactly.
because your message is a very valid message and very important just to our ecosystem alone, and our infrastructure, and all of our economy is based on water, and
Exactly.
So that's why I wanted to bring you in. That's why I wanted to give you this platform. And,
I appreciate that.
And then seeing through your Instagram that you've been recognized, or not recognized, but have been highlighted by such as Louis Aguirre, from Channel 10 and his work.
Yeah.
And those are individuals like yourself and Louis that we need more of you. And fortunately, City of Miami now has a environmental mayor.
Right.
So
Yeah,
hopefully,
Mayor Higgins.
Yes, hopefully you can work with Mayor Higgins.
I would love to work with the City of Miami. Yes.
And there's very much of a need.
Yeah.
The county.
I work very closely with the county. The county
Okay.
has been an amazing partner. I've worked with the mayor's office. I've actually taken the mayor out to the mangroves along with like 20 people from her office. And, I work on her on different environmental education campaigns. So that's been a great partnership. I would love to work with Mayor Higgins. A lot of my work is on City of Miami property, is on Virginia Key. So yeah, that would be amazing.
And just by bringing you on, you really then educate the whole community through government, and because that's our basic content. Before we go, I want to let you know that I love mangroves.
Yeah.
I live on Miami Beach, the Deco Plage. Behind the Deco Plage is the ocean, and we get a ton during season, whatever season it is, of mangroves. Some of them make it, some of them, come already in pieces and broken. But I've gotten this stack that I've decided that at least I'm going to nurture some and develop some for future use.
Amazing.
And that one's for you right there.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No,
I didn't even see that.
Pick that up for you.
Oh, amazing.
That is one. That's a mangrove for you.
Oh, thank you.
That is one that has taken probably that one's already has 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's a little propagule.
Yes, they don't grow that fast.
No, they do not.
They're very. What I like about the mangroves is that they're very. I don't know. They're very minimalist.
Yeah. They don't need a lot.
They don't.
Yeah, they really don't.
But they do a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why for me it was so important to really recognize you with a mangrove.
That makes me so happy.
Good.
I love propagules. I love seedlings. I think they're adorable.
I just thought it was an appropriate thing and gesture to bring to you and thanking you for coming, speaking to us. But really, talk to us about the tree itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the tree.
Yes.
So this is a red mangrove.
Okay.
So you got 3 different kinds of mangroves in South Florida. You have red, black, and white. Red mangroves are the most famous mangroves. They're the most charismatic mangroves, if you will. So, once this little guy grows up, what it's going to do is it's going to have these big branching roots that come out from the trunk. And then as it grows higher and higher, it'll then have the prop roots that come down from the branches. It looks like a banyan almost. And what these root systems do is incredible. So these trees have evolved to survive hurricanes, Category 5 hurricanes, a direct hit. They can be completely submerged in salt water. I'm talking like 20-foot storm surge, and these trees are still around. And it's incredible. And what their roots do, so if you ever dig into the sand in a mangrove forest, you can't dig into it. It's like a giant mesh. All these roots are interconnected. It's like it's like a giant sponge, but it retains all of that sand so that you don't have the erosion of that sand being whisked away with all these storms, with these storm surges. And again, it like I said before, it protects our infrastructure from all of these natural events. So that's the red mangrove. The black mangrove is a cousin, and it has one solid trunk, and then has they're called pneumatophores. So basically, they look like little fingers coming out of the ground. So the red mangroves. They're basically in the ocean. They can be completely submerged in salt water, and they're fine. The black mangroves are a little bit farther inland. They're saltwater resistant. And like the propagules allow them basically to excrete the salt that they accumulate. And then you have farther back, you have the white mangroves. And so they have smaller leaves, and they're less saltwater resistant. So those are the three major mangroves that we have in South Florida. And yeah, they're an amazing, like a truly amazing tree.
Well, for me, it's just the simplicity of the tree, and then the actual what it does for our community. Its purpose. So that's what it's attracted me to develop a love for the mangrove. I have plenty other ones if you like. I have other ones at home which are promulgating, like you said, like the fingers.
Yeah,
from the black ones.
Right.
And I have reds. I don't ever have white ones.
Yeah.
I may have little ones.
Yeah.
Because they have little leaves.
You bring up a good point. You don't need, they can survive in fresh water. I have friends who have mangroves in their backyards. You just need to water them a lot.
Exactly.
But other than that, yeah, these things grow in sand. There's nothing else growing in a red mangrove forest from the bottom up. It's just mangroves, because they can live in very nutrient poor soils, literally just sand.
And sometimes when I travel, my main concern is who's going to water my mangroves? Because they need to be watered, really consistently, or at least throw a mist out of them.
Yeah.
And this morning I was thinking about it. It's like I always have somebody that is willing to come and water them for me, because there was one time that I didn't have somebody, and when I came back, they were all dehydrated,
not doing well,
and it took a very long time for them to come back. So since it takes so long for them to grow, I can't allow that myself to lose any more of them. So that's why I've developed the knack. And you found the algorithms of mangroves in my feed. So that's why I mentioned, I said, I have to get Andrew here. I thank you for the work that you do. It's important for it. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I've committed to doing your cleanup this on Sunday.
You're coming?
Yes.
Okay, it'll be fun.
So I look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely.
And we're here at Community News for anything that you may need or want to share with us, and to maybe get the word out. We feel welcome here, and
Thank you.
We appreciate your time and your effort for everything that you've doing and have done.
Thank you for having me on.
It's quite my pleasure. Take care.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll see you next time.